Mikhail Kelsch versus Aurélien Soula in what is going to be an absolutely phenomenal matchup.
Yeah, this is going to be incredible. You know, we've got a 2 times regional finalist in Aurélien coming off the back of that amazing run in Utrecht a few weeks ago, and then the current World Championship finalist, Mikhail Kelsch, which is going to be just an incredible game. 2 really hot prospects in the VGC scene at the minute in Europe, going head-to-head at this huge event here in London this weekend.
Yeah, and I think at this point, both of these trainers are absolutely used to the spotlight, you know, being able to consistently perform at a very high level that they do. It just goes to pay virtue to how incredible they are and how much patience they put into, you know, their craft itself, team building, meta-analysis, being able to just hone your skills and familiarity with your teams themselves.
Yeah, like we've mentioned, some of the accolades that these players have. Aurélien has been that 2 times finalist at Utrecht special event the last 2 years consecutively, which is an incredible feat in itself. Was the top 16 at Oceania IC previously as well. And then what more than can we say about Mikhail's run last year at Worlds, getting to the finals and getting so close to taking the whole thing. What an incredible run it was to be there to witness Mikhail's run in that entire event.
Yeah, and I think both of these trainers, actually, we were really reviewing their progress throughout the season last year, being able to see them just take up more strides, you know, reach those very high places consecutively and progressively was exceptional, to the point where we did see the payoff, at least from Mikhail's side, of opting to go all the way through to World Championships. And I remember I'd spoken to him about it as well. He wasn't expecting, but he was going in with a cool mind. And he's like, you know what? I'm just here to have fun and play Pokemon. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? That's the best advice anyone could ever give you.
It's a great attitude to have. I think it takes a little bit of the pressure off as well, especially if you are having fun alongside with it. But we're going to take a quick overview of the teams. Of course, we had Aurélien featured on stream yesterday, so those that watched the broadcast yesterday will be familiar with this team, but I'll run through it as we have the Ogerpon with that Hearthflame mask, the Urshifu, the Rillaboom, Fluttermane, Raging Bolt, and Landorus Incarnate.
Yeah, going up against Mikhail's Fluttermane, Urshifu, the Raging Bolt, Landorus Incarnate, Wellspring, Ogerpon, and that's a regular Entei. I'm loving the look of it, and it is such a really neat bring as well.
Yeah, it's not something that we've seen too much of in the format over this weekend, so I think a really nice pick. It offers a different side of the spectrum to what we would see. Its Paradox form in Gouging Fire offer. It does have access to that extreme speed, which is very useful. Of course, the Sacred Fire there, Stomping Tantrum and Flare Blitz. And GL is running the Choice Band item on it, so it has to be very careful if you're going up against it. If you're from Aurélien's side, obviously we can have a closer look at the team here. We are seeing the Urshifu choice for Aurélien is that single strike, not the rapid strike that we're seeing so commonly used in day 2 in particular of this tournament. The Wicked Blow, the Sucker Punch, and that close combat with that Focus Sash, giving it an extra layer of defense there. But we'll take a look at some of the other options here.
Yeah, Dark Terror actually being the choice here for that Urshifu, being able to capitalize off of even more powerful Wicked Blows and Sucker Punches. But that Landorus, Lee, actually does have Taunt, which I think we did see yesterday make a comment as well about it. It's just so well placed in order to get any sort of setups in forms of whether, you know, you got like a Swords Dance setup or a Trick Room setup completely off the board for themselves.
Yeah, and if you can position your Fluttermane well, I like the idea that Aurélien has the Icy Wind on the Fluttermane. So you've got the ability there to have that nice speed control on the Fluttermane to lower the speed on the opposite side of the field, and then maybe utilize that taunt a little bit easier.
And we did see Aurélien yesterday as well, where we were able to have a bit of an insight of how they actually well processed their strategy. They did go up against Justin Tang in what was a thrilling matchup that really came down to the very smallest of margins. I think in game 2, it was a double protect for the win condition for Aurélien to be able to rely on, and they were able to get it. They identified that win condition and pushed through. And up against Justin as well, a multi-regional champion, that's no small feat.
No, definitely not. It was a really great showing from Aurélien to progress in the tournament yesterday, and really got to see a little teaser of what the team is capable of, and I think we're going to expand on that in this next match, because this is going to be a really tough matchup with the pieces that Michael has available on their side of the field.
Exactly that, and actually we've been informed that this is going to be a rematch from Utrecht of the top 4 between Aurélien and Michael. So they have definitely gone up against each other before. It'll be quite interesting to see that this is going to be a more lower level matchup between them both, because they may be more familiar with certain trainer tendencies when it comes to play styles.
Yeah, especially if you are familiar with your opponent, you have played against them before recently. I think you've got a different aspect to look at the match in a different way, because you know what your opponent's trying to do, going to try and do, depending on the similarities with the teams and things as well, which you'll be able to identify straight away when they exchange team sheets. Of course, before we get into that, Michael's team we will need to have a look at is the Fluttermane, the, again, single strike Urshifu with that focus sash. We have the Raging Bolt, Landorus Incarnate, Wellspring Ogerpon, and the Entei.
Yeah, Choice Banded Entei as well to boot. We've got the normal terrestrialization option for those very offensive and explosive extreme speeds when necessary. But I do really like this core, actually. You've got multiple forms of speed control, being that Icy Wind Fluttermane that we know has been quite prevalent in the meta in recent times, whilst accompanied by a second layer of further speed control, being that Electroweb Assault Vest Raging Bolt.
Very similar teams when you look at them both side by side. You've only got the differences really between the 6. There's going to be the Ogerpon Wellspring on Michel's side, and then on Aurelien's side you've got that Hearth Flame form, and then there is obviously the difference with the Entei here for Michel, and for Aurélien has got access to the Rillaboom as opposed to having that kind of outlet there with the Choice Band.
So what do you think will be the main sort of key players going into this matchup, Lee, in between, you know, the strategies that we've got? You mentioned that there's a bit of similarities, but do we think that there's any standout Pokemon?
I think the Fluttermane is going to play a big role here, and we are going to see it lead. I think with that Icy Wind and the booster energy is going to be a big part of both players' kind of game plans.
As we do have the leads. Game 1 is afoot, everybody. We have the interactions of the booster energies coming out, speeds being heightened. Urshifu Fluttermane on Michel's side versus the Fluttermane and Ogerpon Hearthflame over on Aurelien's.
And we are going to get straight into the action here. We're going to see a Terrestrialization turn 1. This looks like it will be on Michel's side, going for that Dark Terror type Urshifu.
Yeah, going for that straight up burst damage. From the looks of things, it may come down to a speed tie here, potentially. We've got Icy Wind coming out first from Michel's side, but Fluttermane over Aurelien's side may still be able to reset that go immediately after due to the interaction of how quick both of these Pokemon are. But the real question is, how quick is the Ogerpon?
Yeah, the Ogerpon, will it outspeed? And it does. It goes for that Wood Hammer into the Fluttermane, picking up a huge knockout here in turn 1. None of these players are holding back here. The Urshifu is still yet to move.
Yet to move, going for the Wicked Blow, however. It will be very powerful. It is going to hit neutral regardless, and getting that critical hit. Ogerpon is out for the count, but we do have the scenario where Michael has utilized their Terra, whilst Aurélien has not.
Yeah, and I think Aurélien is in that position where they have the better outcome of that kind of duel off there, where they've still got access to their speed control, can go for that Icy Wind again this next turn, really disrupt what the Entei is trying to do. Does have access to extreme speed, so if you are the Landorus, you have to be careful around that, but you don't need to worry about the terrestrialization there, because like you say, it has been used up on that Urshifu, and it is a bit in an awkward position now, where the Fluttermane could potentially throw even a Moonblast into that slot.
Yeah, it's a bit tedious if you are Michel. You need to really try to capitalize off of the options of having priority over on your end, and Fluttermane being a main sort of a thorn in your strategy because it's still available for speed control.
Here we go, we are going to see the return of a terrestrialization. It will be from Aurelien's side into that Fluttermane, going for the Fairy Terror type. Will it be going down after that Urshifu trying to remove it from the field, allowing the Landorus room to deal with the Entei?
We're going to have to find out if there's any sort of reads coming into this, and there is a read! Extreme speed into the Fluttermane, followed up by the Sucker Punch, completely read like a book in that scenario. Terrestrialization out of the board for this game, and what unfortunate situation for Aurélien.
Yeah, what a play here from Michel. What, you looked like he was out of context here. The terrestrialization looked like there was no hope, but the double up into that flutter main was great. Seeing the NT go down now to an Earth Power, but what a play.
Yeah, I mean, exceptional play. Michel sort of put things up into square, trying to understand, okay, what's a certain line that Aurélien needs to try to follow in order to avoid and try to capitalize off of me expecting that the obvious play is, okay, well, priority's not going to really work. But no, he completely went through the process of it and was able to get such a great advantage here. But we've got a bit of a change up. Rillaboom, Fake Out, and Grass Terrain is on the field for Aurélien versus that Ogerpon.
Yeah, and you are in a bit of a tricky situation, but you still have that Urshifu at your disposal and utilizing it so well. You have got access to protect Spiky Shield this turn to get around that potential Fake Out, but then you got to really deal with that Landorus the next turn because it will be outspeeding the Urshifu after that Icy Wind drop that you've got to remember from that happened on turn 1. So you have to be able to go with your Ogerpon. Hasn't got enough in the tank to be able to deal with maybe a Grassy Glide and then deal with a Landorus as well.
Yeah, but a relatively safe play here, going for the double protect. Over on Michel's side, you want to avoid the Fake Out, and whilst at it, gain a bit of recovery where need be. And yeah, nice little interaction there of being able to get a tiny bit of damage dealt onto the Rillaboom. But the most important thing right now is the speed ties, the interactions. Is there going to be a redirection effort from Michel or not?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think if you want to protect your Urshifu, you've got the ideal opportunity here to go for that follow me, pull in all of those attacks, and allow maybe the Urshifu to get a Wicked Blow off. But will that Wicked Blow with the Terrestrialization be enough to get the Landorus? I think that's the first thing that you need to do. We are going to see a protect, which could be risky because of that Unseen Fist ability.
Is there going to be another read coming out from Michel's side is the real question here, as we do have the redirection, but following suit immediately after is going to be the Woodhammer thanks to the Icy Wind from Briar. Enough to pick up the one-hit KO, and the Urshifu, who is it going to be trying to target here? It will likely be able to pick up the KO thanks to that additional heightened damage output of the Dark Terrestrialization. It focuses into the Landorus. It does not pick up the KO, and 2 versus 1 should likely be able to wrap this up for Aurélien.
Yeah, that's a huge play there, getting rid of that Ogerpon so easily with that Woodhammer, boosted by that Grassy Terrain. The protect there on the Landorus really backfiring though, going through with that Unseen Fist ability. We are seeing the Urshifu just protect this turn to get some extra recovery from that Grassy Terrain.
And I do really like this protect. Maybe if you could outlast the Grass Terrain turns themselves, you can perhaps survive a Woodhammer from that range with the additional recovery and try to at least capitalize off of it, picking up a KO onto the Landorus first, and then follow suit with that Rillaboom.
Yeah, I think you go for the Sucker Punch here. It's pretty obvious into the Landorus, but you keep it checked. I think the problem is if we see Aurélien go for something where the Sucker Punch doesn't have that interaction and it fails, but we are seeing it. The Landorus going down. Can this Urshifu take the Woodhammer in the Grassy Terrain? That is the big question.
It's going to be a real tough one because we know how hard this Rillaboom can hit. It goes for the Woodhammer, and it does.
It's a huge knockout.
It does pick up the KO, and it gives Aurélien that game 1 in what was such a high, quick-paced matchup.
That was fast and furious from start to finish, and you can see the real value that you've got there with that Miracle Seed on the Rillaboom, boosting those Woodhammers. Huge knockouts there onto both the Ogerpon and the Urshifu. And Urshifu, one of those Pokemon where you say, maybe hasn't got the best special defense, but really renowned to have a good defense stat. Not standing up to that. The Miracle Seed, the Grassy Surge on the field, that Woodhammer, enough to see it through for Aurélien. What a quick-paced game, and I cannot wait to get back into game 2 because that really was down to the wire there.
It really was, and you've got to take into consideration additional scenarios such as Icy Wind misses and sort of redirection. And I think both trainers doing an exceptional job. We see the Woodhammer going ahead, just picking up that raw KO onto the Flutter Mane and sort of allowing the Urshifu to still be able to dispatch damage is great, but it had succumbed to having its speed drop, which did prove to be quite crucial.
It's this turn here, though, predicting the Terrestrialization onto the Flutter Mane, locking in with that extreme speed, and then following up with that Sucker Punch to just render the Flutter Mane useless, protecting that Urshifu going forward in the match, which then clawed it back. It turned the table, swung the momentum in Michiel's favor, and looked like he was really closing down on that. But Rillaboom comes in and saves the day once again for Aurélien.
It was such a nice play, but I'm sure we'll be able to see a couple of of more. Game 2 is upon us. We've got Michel leading once again with that Urshifu and the Fluttermane versus another exact same scenario, Aurélien's Fluttermane and the Ogerpon.
Yeah, and I think the same situation may be going to have to play out here because you have to go for the Icy Wind because you don't want to not lock into the Icy Wind and then fall behind in this match. I think you need to lock in with the Icy Wind here. We know the speed interactions with those booster energies. It's going to mean that even if an Icy Wind goes off, the other Fluttermane is going to go first. But we are seeing a bit of a change up here from Aurelien's side, going for that follow me instead of any big damage here as an Icy Wind is fired out.
Redirection, no terrestrialization from that Urshifu, wanting to at least allow the Fluttermane to survive in the subsequent turn. Dazzling Gleam being the option right now, not going for the Icy Wind here for the speed control, at least wanting to be able to guarantee the Urshifu's HP is depleted from the get-go, maybe allowing for a priority move to come out, maybe being threatened by that Rillaboom, but the Wicked Blow, not enough to pick up the KO without the Terra Boost.
No, and the difference here is now that you, if you are Michel, got the opportunity to go for another Icy Wind here, and then that will put the Fluttermane into a really awkward position where the Urshifu can then go for a Wicked Blow into that slot, pick up the knockout before then Aurélien is able to go for an Icy Wind of its own to really reduce the speed of the opposing Fluttermane. Nice to get the Urshifu down to the sash, but not really quite what you want to be seeing in this situation.
Spiky Shield not wanting to be susceptible to a KO from this Fluttermane. As we know, of course, Unseen Fist will render that useless, but Icy Wind, another one connecting now onto the Fluttermane, being able to drop it down. Urshifu will not be able to move just yet. Dazzling Gleam will be able to pick up the KO onto it, and all of a sudden we saw such a key player from Michel's side in that game 1 being neutralized.
Yeah, and that, you know, the Urshifu going down, not really as effective at all like it was in that game 1. Surprisingly, the Fluttermane still outspeeding the Urshifu there, even after 2 Icy Winds to pick up the knockout there. So really falling back on Aurélien and being able to identify this situation well in this match to preserve both the Ogerpon in this situation and the Fluttermane. But that -2 speed might come into a bit of a problem going forward in this match. May want to look at switching that out, preserving it for later to close things up. But in this situation, the NT coming in does have access to that experience speed, can go into the Ogerpon now. Do you try and preserve the Ogerpon in this situation, or do you just allow it to go down and get a free switch in the next turn?
No redirection. Moonblast will be able to dispatch of the Ogerpon, so no extreme speed focus here, wanting to capitalize off of the damage here, likely locking into Sacred Fire, but guess what? It is actually connecting. Indeed, the animation threw me off just a tiny bit. Critical hit does pick up the KO, and all of a sudden, we have a 3 versus 2 deficit, and Aurélien has to be forced now to bring in their final 2 Pokemon and not have the option to switch out again.
Yeah, and that could be a big, big problem here because the Fluttermane, even though the Rillaboom's coming onto the field, it is going to have access to that Fake Out. It can't utilize that into the Fluttermane, but it does have Grassy Glide. We saw how strong this was in game 1. It is going to be able to go for that into the Fluttermane to remove it from the field. Does have to be careful, of course, from that Entei, because if that goes for a Sacred Fire into the Rillaboom, that's going to be bad news for Aurélien. But you do have the perfect partner in that Landorus Incarnate that can offer some big damage with those Earth powers.
And this may force a scenario where Michel has to at least switch out that Entei to be able to preserve it, as well as the Fluttermane, but no switch outs. But however, we do have the terrestrialization being the Landorus.
Yeah, and going for that poison terrestrialization makes a lot of sense in front of this Fluttermane because you want to be able to resist those Moonblasts. You don't want to take any damage from them, and you want to get rid of that weakness to those Ice-type attacks. You remove that completely, put yourself in a great position to get some good damage onto Michel's side of the field.
Follow-up terrestrialization being the normal type here. Michel likely wanting to lean into a strategy of foregoing its weakness to ground-type moves as the Rillaboom opts to go for Protect and not going on the offensive versus the Fluttermane, likely anticipating a Protect from it. However, it opts to go for the Icy Wind. This is going to be a follow-up double-up, most likely into the Landorus, with the potential of even picking up the KO.
This is going to be a huge turn. The Sacred Fire, though, into the Rillaboom, leaving the Landorus able to get a big attack off, returning with an Earth Power. Not super effective, but doing some big damage.
That's just so much damage onto a neutral type as well. So we are in a scenario where, unfortunately for Michel, yes, you were able cannot survive the Earth Power. However, now you're susceptible to getting picked off by a Grassy Glide.
Yeah, and that's the problem. I think you had the resist to it before now, but with that normal typing, you are susceptible to that. The Entei can get off the extreme speed, so you have to be a little bit wary about that. I don't think the Landorus has taken enough damage, though, for the extreme speed to maybe pick up the knockout. We'll have to come into this turn and see. Not want to even contend with that, switching it out, keeping it for later.
Keeping it for later, as the Ogerpon will be brought out. I do quite like that you have that availability in order to have the extreme speed for the end game. Grassy Glide focusing on the Ogerpon, whilst Moonblast not even able to deal a two-shot onto the Rillaboom, but the Sludge Bomb, quite nice coverage here in order to make sure that any Pokemon switching in will be able to at least get quite damaged there. And we're in a scenario where, Lee, I feel like extreme speed is going to be the name of the game.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, you're looking at the Landorus. Is it in range to get knocked out by the extreme? Probably not. Is the Rillaboom? Maybe. And that is the big question, and I think you've got to go into that Rillaboom now with the extreme speed. Hope that you get it. It will have the priority over Grassy Glide, so it will hit first. But the Rillaboom has already shown the Protect. It's very risky going for the extreme speed into that slot. You could go for double up into that Landorus, but we're not going to see it. Extreme speed coming out.
Extreme speed going into the Landorus, not being able to pick up the KO and not focusing down on the Rillaboom, allowing it to get picked off by the Grassy Glide. But we know that the Landorus had already a couple of icy winds dealt onto it, so this may be a focus of the Fluttermane trying to pick up a cheeky KO if it can. Enough? No, but it's not enough thanks to the Poison Terror.
And we're going to see the Earthbow come out, and it will take down the Fluttermane, closing this match up. Aurélien taking Game 2 and moving on as the winner in this round 13.
And in what way were they able to do this? When you said fast and furiously, you really weren't joking. Both Game 1 and Game 2 was just so situational based on the speed interactions. That really was the name of the game. The Fluttermane correctly identified from yourself being such a key player for both trainers because of the similarities of the sets they had.
Yeah, and I think it probably goes back as well if this is a rematch from previous events where they played each other before.
Yep.
You're familiar with what your opponent does, and I think you know the matchup, so you know what you need to do in this, try and adapt and change things slightly, but I think that was the nature of this game, why we saw it play out so fast and furious, just exchanging blow after blow after blow and hoping that you could kind of get that step forward, a bit of an advantage, and Aurélien all the way through was just able to capitalize in positions where it just looked like it was just falling and slipping away, managed to claw it back and go forward as the winner.
Yeah, and you would have thought that being at that 3 versus 2 deficit in the end game there would have been much to Aurélien's detriment, but they were able to capitalize off of having the Rillaboom have so much offensive pressure against the Fluttermane.
Yeah, and I think the combination as well, when you have those two Pokemon left, you think, okay, you've got no more switches left. But looking at the Landorus Incarnate and then that Rillaboom, they're so complementary to each other because you've got the Entei that can come out, it can Terastallize, and it was almost forced to get rid of that Earth Power weakness. But then you open yourself up, like you quite rightly pointed out, during the match, during that game 2, the Grassy Glide then becomes a huge detriment to you. You've got the extreme speed, but you really want to be able to utilize the Fluttermane to get that initial damage down, and Michelle wasn't quite able to get the damage needed to. The Ogerpon came in as kind of fodder at the end where it allowed you a reposition of the situation, but really didn't change much in the overall essence of everything because the damage just wasn't enough from that Moonblast into the Rillaboom, allowing it to survive, and then from there, we know what happened. It was all closed up.
If there was a Shadow Ball, it would have likely been able to do it. But there wasn't a Shadow Ball.
There's no Shadow Ball.
There's no Shadow Ball. But it sort of goes to show why Rillaboom's grass-boosted item choices have been increasing the stocks of this Pokemon's usage for good reason. Because you don't need to at least dedicate even more overpower scenarios of Grass Terror. Play on the defensive aspect, being able to position yourself to the point where you're able to just have such a strong Pokemon to go up against Trick Room, to have priority, and to just generally deal really good grass-type damage ahead of time.
Yeah, and normally when you see a Rillaboom, you think a great supportive option. It brings the Grassy Terrain, going to give a bit of recovery. That pivot to Fake Out allows something else to come in. But then to put the Miracle Seed on it, or the Meadow Plate like we've seen, and it turns it into something that does a lot of damage into something that knocks things out, and that is so big. But we have Aurélien over on the stage with Charlie ready to give us a few insights into that last match.
Aurélien, we can't keep meeting like this, but you've done it again. You've won on stream. Congratulations. Michael's team, that was really fast and furious, wasn't it, as the casters were saying?
Yeah, yeah, I guess I could say that. Yeah, I mean, it was third time we played this exact matchup. So I won the first two as well, but I got quite lucky in the first two times. So yeah, but I think this one was a bit more clean. It was still lots of mind games, but
Yeah, it certainly was. I mean, we've seen a lot of rapid strike style Shifu, the blur Shifu, but this is all about the Ao Shifu, the single strike, right in, big damage. You're able to mitigate it though, and of course your Flutter main, both speed booster. Talk to us a little bit about that.
yeah. So like since the first set, I knew it was faster. So I guess I know it's probably clicking Icy Wind against my lead, so I don't really have. I mean, if I click Icy Wind, it's so as Shifu don't outspeed Ogre Pawn, not for my Flutter to stay faster than Ace Flutter, and yeah, I think they're both important for speed control for teams in particular in that matchup. Yeah.
Yeah, the first game was absolutely crazy. There were knockouts being taken left, right, and center. And then in the second game, again, you're able to balance the tables a little bit. This seems to be Michel's play style, to go in with a lot of damage and try and do it quickly, but you were taking things more measured. Would you say that as a player, you tend to be a little bit more balanced?
I don't know. I'm not sure if I'd say that. I think we both have overall an offensive style. I think we overall like the same teams, kind of our
Okay.
teams that play similarly. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, you've also got to know how to play the player that is in front of you and experiment with the team building to find what works for you individually, because everyone will have their own preference. So, Aurélien, that's Swiss Round 13. We're nearing the end of Swiss Rounds. How are you feeling now?
I'm feeling much better than I was yesterday. I guess
really?
you could say. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, 2 rounds left. We'll see how they go.
Yeah, just keep our fingers crossed and we'll have to see. And of course, the match you just had, that was a rematch between you and Michel from the Utrecht top 4 as well, which you were victorious in there too. So interesting history that's being built up between you and Michel there. Now, I already asked you yesterday about Bulbasaur, Charmander or Squirtle. You chose Charmander, so Charmander is currently winning. It's on 6 points, Bulbasaur's on 5, and Squirtle's still on just the 1. So again, we'll keep tabs on how that is going for you. Any shout out you want to give to Charmander, first of all?
Yeah, thanks for evolving into a G-Max Charizard and carrying me the whole season in 2022.
Heartfelt words indeed from Aurélien there. Not necessarily in Gen 1, but certainly in Gen 8. And other general shout-outs you want to give Aurélien, another chance?
Yeah, I guess it's going to be much of the same as yesterday, but yeah, shout out to everyone supporting me throughout the years. Yeah, shout out to in particular to my parents for bringing me to events. Yeah, to Kyle for having been with me through the prep, even though we didn't end up building a team. Again to Suika for building the team. And yeah, and really to everyone supported me, really. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Aurélien. Well, trainers, that's Swiss Round 13. Unlucky for some, but one thing's for sure, we're all having fun.